My wife stole from our savings to buy lavish gifts and Getaway with the man her called best friend forever, so I stepped back and flipped her world without warning. I'm a 34-year-old man who was married to Jenna, a 31-year-old woman for almost 5 years. We met at a friend's Halloween party back in 2018 when I was still grinding through my career progression. I grew up in Michigan. My dad worked at the GM plant for 18 years until they laid him off in 2008. I watched my parents lose everything, their house, their savings, their dignity. Dad couldn't handle it, spiraled into depression, and developed health issues that drained what little they had left. Mom took extra shifts at the hospital where she worked as a nurse, pulling 60-plus-hour weeks just to keep the lights on. I promised myself I'd never end up financially vulnerable like that. I busted my ass through state college with scholarships and student loans, majored in kinesiology, then got my Doctor of Physical Therapy degree. I worked nights at a 24-hour gym, cleaning equipment for $9.25 per hour. I'd vacuum the whole place at 3 in the morning while studying anatomy flashcards. I graduated with honors despite everything. My parents couldn't afford to attend my graduation ceremony, so I mailed them the program and my honor cords. Mom framed them. I started as a staff physical therapist at a rehab clinic, making $65,000 annually, working 60-hour weeks for 3 years straight while paying off student loans. I lived in a studio apartment with secondhand furniture and a mattress on the floor. I tracked every single expense in an Excel spreadsheet. My friends thought I was obsessive. They were hitting the bars while I was calculating compound interest scenarios and maximizing my 401k match. By 27, I was debt-free and had saved enough to approach 2 colleagues, Joe and Alicia, about opening our own private physical therapy practice. We each put in $40,000, secured an SBA loan for $250,000, and found a medical office space with reasonable rent. The first year was brutal, working 12-hour days, handling both patient care and administrative work, barely taking a salary. We'd take turns sleeping on the office couch during 16-hour shifts, ate ramen and protein bars for lunch, and used patient-free hours to cold call insurance companies for provider status. Joe's girlfriend dumped him that year, saying she didn't sign up for dating a ghost. Alicia's husband stuck with her, but only after a series of epic fights. I was single, which was actually an advantage, no one to disappoint but myself. We specialized in sports medicine and post-surgical rehab, which gave us a market edge. By presenting at orthopedic offices, bringing lunch for staff, and delivering consistent results, we built a strong referral network. I took on the toughest knee and shoulder cases, earning a reputation that brought in athletes from across 3 counties. 5 years in, we've got 2 locations, 12 employees, and clear about $950,000 annually between the 3 of us. It's not screw you money, but I don't stress when the property tax bill comes anymore. I've got $480,000 in retirement accounts, a 6-month emergency fund, and my net worth finally hit 7 figures last quarter. I upgraded my car to a Lexus, not the newest model, but a certified pre-owned that I negotiated down to 12% below market value by showing up with financing already secured and being willing to walk away. Jenna's a pharmaceutical sales rep for MK, pulling in around $125,000 with commission. She's got that polished corporate look, always done up like she's walking into a photo shoot, not a clinic. When we met, she was stuck in a cramped apartment with 2 roommates and $62,000 in student loans. She expected me to pick up every tab from day one because, you make more than me anyway. I noticed she had a $400 monthly car payment on a new Audi and spent about $300 a month on nail appointments, hair, and clothing she couldn't afford. Her credit score was a disaster, 629 with multiple late payments. Her idea of financial planning was hoping for a bigger commission check next month. I still helped her refinance her debt from 7.5% to 4.2%, taught her about investing, and supported her as she moved up at work. Within a year, she got a company car and decent benefits. She still has about $42,000 in student loans because she only makes minimum payments, despite my advice to accelerate payoff. "What's the rush?" she'd say. "They'll always be there." 2 years ago, we bought a house in the suburbs outside Detroit. 2,800 square feet, unfinished basement, 2-car garage, brick exterior with a newer roof and recently updated kitchen. Practical improvements, not just cosmetic upgrades. I put down 75% of the $65,000 down payment, but we're both on the deed. Property taxes are $7,200. Annually, the mortgage is $2,300 per month on a 30-year fixed at 4.1%. I wanted a 15-year mortgage to save $12,000 in interest. She insisted on 30 years for flexibility. I calculated that her flexibility would cost us over $2,800 per year in additional interest. She rolled her eyes when I showed her the amortization schedule. No kids, though she'd been pushing for them lately, which would have meant her staying home for at least a year, something our finances could handle but would definitely change our lifestyle. Our wedding was decent. She wanted a $35,000 affair. We compromised at $22,000. I paid $18,000 of it. Her parents contributed $4,000 and acted like they'd funded the whole thing. They took credit for the open bar during their toast. The bar I negotiated and paid for. Her dad cornered me at the rehearsal dinner, half drunk, to tell me how lucky I was to marry his daughter. Meanwhile, I was signing checks for vendors he couldn't afford. Her friends all seemed normal enough, including her college buddy Ryan, who gave a brief speech at the reception. I'd met him a few times at group events. Seemed like a basic finance bro with too much product in his hair and a habit of name-dropping his firm and clients. Always wore those Vineyard Vines shirts with little whales on them, and talked about his summer house share in the Hamptons like he owned the place, instead of splitting it with 8 other guys. The kind of dude who buys expensive sunglasses but can't afford to max out his 401k. He lived in Chicago, so we'd only see him once or twice a year when he'd visit, or when we'd make the trip out there. Jenna would mention him occasionally, but nothing that raised any flags, just a regular friendship. He'd send her memes about pharmaceutical sales, and she'd laugh harder than the content deserved. Standard stuff. Marriage had its usual ups and downs, but we were solid. We had our routines, circle of friends, and plans for the future. I was focused on growing the practice, and Jenna was climbing the corporate ladder at MK. We'd talk about starting a family once we hit certain financial milestones. Specifically, once we had $50,000 set aside for potential maternity leave and childcare costs. Everything had a plan. 8 months ago, Ryan announced he was relocating to our city for a career opportunity. He works in finance for a sports apparel company and could literally work from anywhere, but he chose Detroit out of all the places in America. Jenna was ecstatic. The first few weeks were fine. We had Ryan over for dinner to welcome him. I introduced him to some local business contacts since he was new to the area. Helped him find a decent apartment in Corktown, even connected him with my realtor. He seemed grateful, and I figured having him around might be good for Jenna. She always said she wished she had more close friends in the city. What I didn't realize was that she already had her best friend. But things shifted gradually. First, it was Ryan texting during our date nights. Then it was Jenna canceling our weekend plans because Ryan was going through a rough patch and needed support. By month 2, he was at our house at least twice a week for dinner, which Jenna would make me pay for and help prepare, but she wouldn't let me choose the menu because Ryan doesn't like spicy food. The guy had an opinion on everything, from how I loaded the dishwasher to which investments I should be making. NFTs are the future, man. My buddy made 6 figures on digital art last year. Meanwhile, his retirement account was probably 80% overvalued tech stocks and 20% meme coins. When I mentioned to Jenna that we seemed to be seeing a lot of Ryan, she rolled her eyes. He's new in town and doesn't know many people yet. Stop being so controlling. I dropped it temporarily, figuring it was just an adjustment period, but temporary turned into permanent real fast. If I suggested a date night, Jenna would invite Ryan along without asking me. He's been really down lately, work stress. He could use the distraction. When I pushed back, she'd snap, "You know how much I value loyalty. I've known him since college. You're acting like a child." Then came the secret texting. She'd angle her phone away when messaging him or step outside to take his calls. Nothing sexual, I checked our phone records, just constant communication. When I'd be working on patient files at the kitchen table, she'd be on the couch giggling at something Ryan sent her. 3 to 4 hour text conversations while we were in the same room. Things I'd do would warrant a polite nod, but Ryan's mediocre jokes would have her laughing until she cried. I'd come home with good news about the practice and get it distracted. "That's great, babe," while she typed on her phone. But the moment Ryan texted about getting a new client, she'd light up like Times Square on New Year's Eve. One night, Jenna and I were supposed to attend a clinic opening for my practice. A huge deal for us professionally. We'd invested $85,000 in new equipment, hired 3 additional staff, and were launching a specialized rehab program that could potentially double our revenue. Local news was covering it. My business partners had brought their spouses. I wore my best suit, the one I saved for meeting with potential investors, and had my talking points ready for the reporter from the Business Journal. 20 minutes before we were supposed to leave, Ryan called with a plumbing emergency at his apartment. Jenna insisted on skipping my event to help him deal with the landlord. "He doesn't know anyone else here yet," she insisted, already grabbing her keys. "You don't need me there anyway, it's just a bunch of medical people talking shop." I went alone, explaining to my partners that my wife had a family emergency. Alicia gave me a look that said she wasn't buying it but was too professional to call me out in front of clients. Later, I found out the emergency was a dripping faucet. Ryan, a 33-year-old man making 6 figures, couldn't figure out how to turn off the water valve under the sink, or more likely, couldn't bear an evening without being the center of Jenna's attention. The pattern became clear. Ryan would insert himself into our plans, and Jenna would defend him at every turn. If I pointed this out, she'd get defensive. "You're being ridiculous. He's just a friend who needs support right now." As weeks passed, her excuses evolved. "Ryan's going through things you couldn't understand" became "you have your work friends, I'm allowed to have mine." And finally, "maybe if you were more interesting to be around, I wouldn't need to spend so much time with Ryan." That last one hit like a gut punch. 5 years together, building a life, a business, a future. And suddenly I wasn't interesting enough compared to finance bro Ryan and his manufactured dramas. Meanwhile, I couldn't help but notice our joint credit card statement showing Jenna buying Ryan lunch 2 to 3 times a week. Nothing huge, $15 to $20 each time, but it added up to nearly $250 a month. When I mentioned it, she claimed it was networking since Ryan knew people at companies MK wanted to target. I did some quick math. $250 a month was $3,000 a year, almost half of what we put into her Roth IRA annually. She was literally investing more in lunches with Ryan than in some aspects of her own future. My business partner Alicia noticed it at our clinic's holiday party. Ryan dominated every conversation Jenna was part of, positioning himself between us whenever possible. He kept touching Jenna's elbow or placing his hand on her back while talking to other guests. Nothing inappropriate, but definitely possessive. "That guy is trying way too hard," Alicia said afterward. "Is everything okay at home?" What could I say? I just shrugged and changed the subject. I started to see behavioral patterns I'd missed before. Whenever I achieved something significant, signing a new contract with a major insurance provider, getting featured in a physical therapy journal, Jenna would diminish it subtly. "That's nice, babe. Ryan just landed a meeting with the CFO of Under Armour." Always the comparison, always with me coming up short. For Christmas, she got Ryan a $300 jacket from Patagonia, charged to our joint account. When I asked about the discrepancy, she said, "Ryan's been having a rough year." Right, because nothing says rough year like a voluntary relocation and a 6-figure job. That's when I realized we were in a one-sided emotional throuple that I never agreed to join. The shit hit the fan at a housewarming party we hosted for some potential referring physicians I was courting, colleagues from Jenna's company, and of course, Ryan. I'd spent 2 days preparing for this party. Marinated steaks from a local butcher, not the grocery store, made my grandmother's secret recipe potato salad that usually gets people asking for the recipe. Set up the patio with string lights and a decent speaker system. This party wasn't just social, it was strategic. 2 of the guests were orthopedic surgeons who could potentially refer $200,000 worth of patients annually. The evening was going well enough. Food was a hit, conversation flowing. After dinner, we moved to the back patio. The air had that perfect early fall crispness. The investment in outdoor heaters was paying off as everyone was comfortable despite the cooling evening. One of the physicians mentioned new healthcare regulations affecting reimbursement rates. And Ryan and I realized we had opposing views. Not extreme either way, just different perspectives. The conversation stayed professional at first, but with each point I made, Ryan would look at Jenna with this smug little smile, as if to say, "Can you believe this guy?" After one particularly patronizing comment about how physical therapists are just failed doctors who couldn't handle real medical school, I decided enough was enough. I hadn't busted my ass for 7 years of higher education, built a successful practice from nothing, and treated thousands of patients to be condescended to in my own backyard. "Ryan, we can disagree without condescension. We're all professionals here." His face flushed, he turned to Jenna. "Are you going to let him talk to me like that?" Before she could respond, I cut in. "I'm speaking directly to you, not through my wife, and I'm just asking for basic respect in my own home." Ryan stood up, bourbon in hand. "You don't know what you're talking about. Never have. Jenna knows it too. She's just too nice to say it to your face." I stayed seated, calm, looked over at Jenna, expecting her to diffuse the situation, or at least not throw me under the bus. Instead, she was staring at Ryan with this worried expression, like she was terrified of upsetting him. "Ryan, he didn't mean anything by it," she said. "Actually, I meant exactly what I said," I countered. "We can disagree without being disrespectful. Pretty simple concept." The patio went silent. My friend Joe caught my eye with a "what the hell" expression. Dr. Wilson, a surgeon who refers about $120,000 worth of patients to us annually, raised his eyebrows in surprise. Ryan sat down his drink with exaggerated care. "I think I'm going to head out. Call me later, Jen." Then he walked through our house and left, making sure to slam the front door. Jenna immediately chased after him. I could hear them talking out front but couldn't make out the words. When she returned, she was visibly upset but trying to hide it from our guests. She plastered on a fake smile and tried to restart conversations, but the damage was done. The rest of the night was strained. After everyone left around midnight, I was cleaning up when Jenna cornered me in the kitchen. "You need to apologize to Ryan," she said, arms crossed, looking at me like I was dirt. I closed the dishwasher slowly, turned to face her. "Excuse me? You embarrassed him in front of everyone." "You need to apologize, Jenna. He was being deliberately condescending in our home to our clients and friends. If anyone owes an apology, it's him." She shook her head. "You don't understand. Ryan doesn't handle conflict well. He's sensitive. And I don't handle disrespect in my own house well," I replied evenly. "Has it occurred to you that your best friend might have a problem with your husband?" "That's not true," she said, but couldn't maintain eye contact. "He's just protective." "Protective? I'm your husband, not a freaking threat, and you're a grown woman who doesn't need protection from dinner conversation." She shifted her weight. "Look, this is simple. You need to apologize to Ryan, or things are going to get difficult between us." I stared at her, processing what I just heard. "You're giving me an ultimatum over a disagreement with your friend?" That's when she dropped the bomb. "He's been in my life way longer than you have, and he will always be there for me, and honestly, he's more important to me than you are right now." The words hung in the air between us. For the first time, I was seeing my marriage for what it really was for her. A backup plan. A financial security blanket, not a partnership. I didn't raise my voice, didn't argue, just looked at her for a long moment, then walked upstairs to our bedroom and closed the door. I pulled out my laptop and started documenting everything. Dates, times, and notable incidents with Ryan. I reviewed our financial statements, took screenshots of our joint accounts, and began compiling a detailed record of our assets. I didn't sleep that night, just planned, calculated, and strategized. By morning, Jenna tried to talk to me, hovering in the doorway of our bedroom where I sat with my laptop. "You're overreacting." I didn't respond. Instead, I got dressed for work, grabbed my laptop, and walked past her in the kitchen without a word. She was still in her pajamas, makeup from last night smudged under her eyes, looking confused, like she genuinely couldn't understand why her words had consequences. At the clinic, I called Tony, a financial advisor who'd helped set up our business accounting. "I need to protect my assets," I explained. Tony understood immediately and didn't ask unnecessary questions. His advice was straightforward: document everything, move quickly, and be strategic. He recommended a forensic accountant who could help determine exactly what was mine versus joint property. By dessert, I had a 3-phase plan and a list of professionals to contact. Tony picked up the check despite my objection. "Consider it a professional courtesy," he said. "You didn't deserve this, but you're handling it right." That afternoon, I opened a new bank account at a different bank from where Jenna and I had our joint accounts. I transferred my most recent profit distribution, a $38,000 check that hadn't hit our joint account yet, directly to this new account. It was earned after the emotional separation began, but I logged it in my records as marital income in case we had to divide it later. Not hiding money, just ensuring I had operating capital regardless of what happened next. I also moved $5,000 from my personal savings, money I'd had before marriage, to the new account to cover immediate legal expenses. Then I called my attorney, Chris, to understand my options. We met for coffee before his afternoon court appearance. "I'm not filing for divorce yet," I clarified. "Just want to know where I stand legally if things head that direction." He walked me through Michigan's equitable distribution laws and what documentation I should gather. Being prepared isn't paranoid, it's prudent. I downloaded all our financial statements for the past 30 to 6 months, cataloged our major purchases and which accounts they came from, made copies of our house deed, mortgage documents, and insurance policies, and took photos of all valuable items in the house, especially those I'd owned before marriage. When I returned home that evening, Jenna was waiting. "We need to talk about last night," she said as soon as I walked in. "I heard everything I needed to hear," I replied, keeping my voice level. "Your priorities are clear. You're blowing this out of proportion." I was angry. People say what they really think when they're angry. The filter comes off. "So that's it? You're just going to shut down over one comment?" "Yes," I simply replied. Over the next few weeks, I established a new routine. Up at 5 in the morning for the gym before work, home late, focusing on expanding our practice, weekends spent reconnecting with friends I'd neglected. I was physically present in our house, but emotionally I'd left the building. My body changed as stress dropped and physical activity increased. I lost the 10 pounds of married man weight I'd been carrying, started sleeping better despite everything. I made sure to document every day that Jenna chose Ryan over me or our marriage. I started a spreadsheet tracking the nights she didn't come home until after 11 at night. noted how often Ryan called or texted during what should have been our time together. The spreadsheet became almost meditative, each entry another reason to keep moving forward with my plan. Jenna noticed the change immediately. At first, she tried to pull me back with tears and half-assed apologies. "I didn't mean it like that, and you're twisting my words." When that didn't work, she shifted to anger and accusations. "You're punishing me," she'd say. "This is emotional abuse." I'd respond with calm detachment. "I'm adjusting to the new parameters of our relationship. You made your choice, I'm making mine." Her manipulation tactics became almost fascinating to observe once I wasn't emotionally invested in them. The crying when she wanted attention, the silent treatment when she wanted me to chase her, the sudden interest in sex when she felt me pulling away. None of it worked anymore. During this time, I quietly met with a real estate agent to get an accurate appraisal of our home. Property values in our neighborhood had increased 18% since purchase, meaning we had about $95,000 in equity, with my share being roughly $70,000 based on my contribution to the down payment and mortgage. The agent also gave me comps for similar properties we could potentially use to establish fair market value without a formal appraisal, saving about $500 in potential divorce expenses. I also discovered Jenna had opened a separate credit card I didn't know about 4 months earlier. The statements were going to her work email, not our home address. I only found it because a collection notice came to our house when she missed a payment, likely lost track of it among her other bills. She'd racked up $8,300 in charges, including several expensive dinners with Ryan, a weekend trip to Chicago they taken for networking, and a $1,200 watch she'd bought him for his birthday. I saved digital copies of all of it. I documented every unauthorized expense as potential evidence of dissipation of marital assets, because buying your friend a $1,200 watch with shared funds isn't just tacky, it's legally relevant. I started working more at the clinic, arriving first, leaving last, took on the complex cases I found most intellectually stimulating, started researching advanced treatment protocols I hadn't had time to implement before. Professional growth became my focus again, as my emotional investment in my marriage decreased. My professional success increased. Our clinic secured a contract with the local college's athletic department that would boost our annual revenue by 25%. I hired a new physical therapist specializing in hand therapy, opening up a whole new patient demographic, and started exploring opening a satellite office in Ann Arbor, which would put us in a much more affluent market with better reimbursement rates, the demographic sweet spot for physical therapy. During this time, I started working more closely with Lauren, our office manager. She was smart, efficient, and actually respected my boundaries. We kept things strictly professional, but I appreciated her competence and work ethic. She'd been with our practice since shortly after we opened, and had single-handedly streamlined our billing process, resulting in a 15% increase in insurance collections. At home, Jenna's frustration grew as she realized her usual tactics weren't working. She started spending more time with Ryan, sometimes not coming home until late at night. I didn't ask where she'd been or what they were doing, didn't care anymore. She'd occasionally try to reignite my interest through old tactics, would walk around in lingerie that used to drive me crazy, would suggest weekend getaways to places we'd enjoyed in the past, once even tried cooking my favorite meal. I remained polite but distant, shared a bed but not physical affection, maintained financial contributions to joint expenses but stopped any discretionary spending on her. No more random gifts or surprise concert tickets. Then one evening, I invited both Lauren and Joe from the clinic over for dinner to discuss expansion plans. We spread documents across the dining table, talked business strategy, and enjoyed a meal I'd prepared. It felt good to use my own home for something productive again. We were discussing financing options for the new location when Jenna walked in during dessert, clearly not expecting to find me entertaining colleagues. "I didn't know we were having company," she said, her eyes fixed on Lauren. Lauren smiled politely. "The food is amazing. I didn't know you could cook like this." "There's plenty left if you're hungry," I told Jenna, knowing she wouldn't join us. She mumbled something about already eating and disappeared upstairs. I could hear her moving around up there, probably texting Ryan about the woman at our dining table. After Lauren and Joe left, Jenna stormed downstairs. "Really? Having her over to our house?" "Lauren and Joe are my business partners. This is my house too. Don't play dumb." I saw how she looked at you. I almost laughed. "You're accusing me of inappropriate behavior with a colleague? That's rich, coming from someone who prioritizes her friend over her marriage. That's different, and you know it." "Is it? Because from where I'm standing, you chose Ryan over me. You made that crystal clear. I'm just adapting to the situation." "So this is what, revenge?" "No, Jenna, this is me moving on with my life." She stared at me, eyes narrow. "You know what? Forget this. I'm going out. Enjoy yourself," I said. Jenna grabbed her keys and purse, slamming the door on her way out. I knew exactly where she was going, Ryan's apartment, her priority. I continued securing my finances, setting aside funds and building documentation of our separate lives. Before filing anything official, I changed the beneficiary on my life insurance policy from Jenna to my sister, updated my professional liability insurance to remove Jenna as an insured party, and adjusted my retirement account distributions to minimize what would be considered marital property moving forward. Each week, the distance between us grew. We were roommates now, nothing more, two strangers sharing a mortgage. I'd come home to find evidence she'd been there, dishes in the sink, mail opened, but more often than not, she'd be out, presumably with Ryan. I started looking at condos downtown, aiming for something industrial with high ceilings, good natural light, and within walking distance to restaurants on the river, the kind of place I'd always wanted. I found a 1,400 square foot unit with exposed brick, an updated kitchen, and secured parking. A client connected me with the seller, who was motivated to move fast. I filed that info away for when the timing was right. Between patients one Tuesday, I received a text from Joe. Ryan got fired. Just heard through Lindsay's husband, who works in the same building. I didn't respond immediately. Later, I confirmed it through a LinkedIn connection who worked at the same company. Ryan had been let go for performance issues, likely the end result of spending more time managing my wife's emotions than doing his actual job. 3 weeks later, Jenna didn't come home after storming out following another argument about my emotional unavailability. She texted around midnight, staying at Ryan's. Don't wait up. I didn't respond. Instead, I called my lawyer the next morning. It's time, I said. Over the next 48 hours, I moved quickly, transferred my remaining personal belongings to a storage unit I'd rented the previous month. Small stuff, mostly books, winter, clothes, the good chef's knives I'd bought before marriage, family photos, memorabilia from college. Things that mattered to me but wouldn't be immediately noticed missing. I emptied our joint checking account down to exactly half the balance, $11,800, leaving her share untouched, canceled our joint credit cards after, paying them off in full, sent certified letters to all our utility providers removing myself from the accounts, and had my mail forwarded to a P.O. box I'd set up weeks earlier. I met with a locksmith I knew through the clinic, and had duplicate keys made for the safe deposit box where we kept our important documents, not to take anything, just to ensure I'd have access if needed. 2 days later, Jenna came home to pick up clothes. I was sitting at the kitchen table, folders neatly arranged in front of me. We need to talk, I said, voice even. Now you want to talk? She said, rolling her eyes after weeks of silent treatment. I slid a manila folder across the table. Divorce papers. My terms are fair. You keep the house if you refinance in your name only and buy out my equity. We split the joint savings. I keep my business interests. You keep your 401k and stock options. No spousal support. We go our separate ways, clean and simple. Her face drained of color. She stared at the papers like they might bite. Wait, what? You can't be serious. Dead serious. My lawyer will file these next week if you don't contest. But why now? Why not? You've made your choice. You're staying at Ryan's. I'm moving on. This is about Lauren, isn't it? Her voice cracked. You're leaving me for her. No, Jenna, I'm leaving you because you left me months ago. You just didn't move your stuff out yet. She sank into a chair, finally processing the reality of the situation. What am I supposed to do? The mortgage? Our plans? We're not a team anymore, I said evenly. The chess pieces have moved. Play your own game now. I can't believe you're being so cold about this. I learned from the best. She stared at me, tears welling. I thought you'd fight for us. I did. You chose Ryan. Now I'm choosing myself. Jenna left with the papers, refusing to sign them on the spot. I didn't care. The wheels were in motion. The timing was perfect. She'd been away from home for multiple nights, created a paper trail of abandonment through her own texts, and was likely too emotionally entangled with Ryan to think clearly about legal strategy. 3 days later, she texted, Ryan's going back to Chicago, got a better job offer. I didn't respond, just added it to my documentation, noting date and time, another data point confirming what I already knew. Ryan wasn't relocating for her. He was using her as an emotional crutch until something better came along. He'd probably been interviewing in Chicago for weeks. My attorney confirmed that Ryan's name had appeared 437 times in our phone records over the past 6 months. She had called or texted him every single day, often multiple times, including during our anniversary dinner and when I was in the hospital for a minor procedure. The evidence of emotional abandonment was overwhelming. Michigan doesn't recognize alienation of affection as grounds for additional compensation, but the pattern established her priorities clearly. We'd identified 3 key witnesses who could testify to Jenna's behavior if needed. My business partner, Alicia, a mutual friend who'd seen her prioritize Ryan at multiple social events, and surprisingly, her own cousin, who had reached out to me after hearing we were separating. Finally, a week later, she showed up at the clinic. Lauren intercepted her in the waiting room. I watched through the office window as Jenna got increasingly agitated, gesturing with her hands, her voice rising just enough for other patients to notice. Lauren maintained perfect composure, standing between Jenna and the hallway to the treatment rooms, protecting my professional space while I finished with my patient. When I finished, I met her in my office. "The papers," she said, sliding the signed documents across my desk. "You win." "This isn't about winning or losing," I replied. "It's about consequences." "Ryan left," she said, voice small. Didn't even say goodbye properly, just texted that he was starting the new job next week and would send for his stuff. "And this surprises you?" She looked down. "I thought he was different. He cared about the attention you gave him, not about you." "I made a mistake," she said, meeting my eyes. "A huge one." I nodded. "Yes, you did." "Is there any chance we could know?" I said firmly. "That bridge isn't just burned, Jenna. It's gone. The foundations don't even exist anymore." She wiped away a tear. "I really did love you, you know." "Maybe," I replied, "but you didn't respect me, and without respect, love means nothing." Our divorce was finalized 62 days later, the fastest possible under Michigan law since we had no kids and she didn't contest it. I took the day off to go rock climbing, something I'd always wanted to do, but Jenna had vetoed as too dangerous and pointless. The instructor said I had natural ability, strong grip strength from years of manual therapy work, good balance, calm under pressure. I booked a series of lessons on the spot. Then I met my friends for dinner at an upscale steakhouse downtown. "To freedom," Alicia toasted, raising her glass. "And to knowing your worth," added Joe. The next morning, I woke up in my new condo overlooking the Detroit River. The place was smaller than our house had been, but it was all mine. No compromises, no competing for attention. I'd paid cash for it using the equity from the house, saving about $28,000 in interest over 5 years compared to getting a mortgage. I checked my email over coffee. Our practice had been approached about expanding to a third location, this time in partnership with a major orthopedic surgeon group. The potential earnings would more than double our current revenue. The contract included a signing bonus that would fully fund my Roth IRA for the year. My phone buzzed with a text from Lauren, confirmed the meeting with the orthopedic group for Friday at 10. "Also, still on for dinner this weekend?" I smiled and replied, "Absolutely, looking forward to both." Lauren and I had started dating a month after my divorce was finalized. Nothing rushed, nothing impulsive, just two adults who respected each other's ambitions and boundaries. She didn't need me financially or emotionally. She had her own successful career, her own friends, her own interests. Last I heard, Jenna was struggling. The mortgage on the house was straining her finances now that she was paying it alone. She'd reached out once or twice with thinly veiled attempts to reconnect, but I maintained the no-contact boundary. Some days I think about what might have happened if I'd stayed, if I'd continued to accept being second choice. Would I have expanded the practice this way? Would I have discovered what I'm truly capable of? In the end, the best revenge wasn't anything I did to Jenna or Ryan. It was what I did for myself. I built a life they couldn't touch, financially, physically, emotionally, because the most important thing I learned through all this, I'd rather be alone than be anybody's second choice. And the funny thing is, once you learn that lesson, you rarely end up alone.